Hi and welcome to AXSChat. Today we've got Paul Smyth with us from Barclays. I've known Paul for a few years now and have collaborated with him on a number of projects for the Business Disability Forum. I'm delighted, and I think we're generally all really pleased to have you here because Barclays do such amazing work in the world of accessibility. So thanks for joining us, Paul. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Neil, Deborah, and Tony. I guess first off, thanks for having me. I've been keen to, get on AXSChat and following it for a while now. I guess in terms of, so are you getting echo or hearing me okay?
No, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Excellent. So in terms of my story, so I head up IT accessibility for a bank, something I've done for the last 4 years. That's all about how we identify, anticipate, address the technological barriers faced by disabled and older people, making it easier to do business with a bank for customers or be employed by the bank for our staff. And I think about, I wear several hats, if you like, in terms of what me and my central team do. There's almost 3 things. It's around enabling, engaging and embedding accessibility across the business. So when I think about enabling, that's, if you like, the trainer hat, so how we provide the training and tools for all the change in digital teams to deliver things accessibly. When I think about engaging, that's about how we influence the business and boost awareness. It's the evangelism hat. And then when I think about how we embed, that's about how we promote police standards, how we measure compliance and the benefits that accessibility brings. That's, if you like, the policeman's helmet. So something I've done for the past 4 years. Haven't always been doing this. I guess my background is, if you like, as the blind accountant. I spent the first 10 years in Barclays working in finance. I'm a chartered accountant by trade, an interest rate risk manager. But again, I mentioned I have very poor eyesight, Stargardt's disease. I lost most of my sight as a teenager growing up. And I guess when I reflect on losing most of my sight as a kid, showing my age, but back then there wasn't the awesome assistive tech to help. It's really tough having to use, powerful magnifiers or binoculars to see what was on the blackboard or to read textbooks. And, everything was doubly hard, to do the same things or achieve the same things as my sighted classmates. This sort of feeling that it was unfair. And I guess that sort of stayed with me. And I guess what led me to, if you like, and why I lead the accessibility agenda or the digital accessibility agenda at Barclays is that belief that it is still, inherently unfair that folks who face the biggest challenges in everyday life shouldn't face the biggest challenges in doing business with us or having a job with us. So hopefully that sort of just sets the scene in terms of my role and how I came to it.
Sure. So, and I think I met you almost like first day on the job, funnily enough. It was sort of over in Olympic Park thing. So for the Shore Trust.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So and you've done so much since. I think that for instance, the work that your team has done on Persona is a really interesting piece. So and you've iterated on that. So I know that David, who's sat off screen, has done a lot of work on that, and it's it's a good piece of work. But you also do stuff looking at all kinds of services, because both, as you said, you're both looking at services for staff, but also you really do have a public face. Aside from the sort of I'm trying to think, commercial banking, you have the retail banking arm, so you're touching thousands and thousands of customers all the time. So it's really important that you get it right. So can you tell us a few examples of how you're addressing your customer experience?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And just hearing you sort of talk, Neil, about the meeting almost day one of my job many moons ago. Just sort of showing you a story there that's kind of relevant to us all. And when I think about hearing some of the awesome speakers from before, back then I was really nervous about, if you like, being successful in finance, but if you like, being the guy with a disability who then moves to lead the disability agenda, and I guess accessibility leaders, disability champions, folks who you have week on week, it's kind of not all about what they say, but what they don't say. You know, they possess some skills and qualities that you can't really be brought or taught easily. You know, about persistence and passion, to influence, storytelling, the authenticity that goes with that, you know, the creativeness or problem solving to drive change, or the resilience to deal with, you know, when things don't go wrong. And I guess that was almost a turning point, thinking about how I jumped in here. I was really worried about it when I started, but now I realise that's a sort of huge advantage. But I guess coming back to your customer services, what we're doing, there's a ton of stuff. I guess, you know, this isn't corporate social responsibility for Barclays. There's a clear commercial carrot when you think about banking, and many of your older customers, you know, age and disability highly correlated, tend to be, in banking speak, your most valuable customers. You know, they're very heavy on assets, if you like, and they're very important, without boring you to death with liquidity and capital rules, with balancing the books. You know, if you have lots of other customers who have mortgages and loans and so forth. So, you know, there's a compelling business case in banking of why wouldn't you make sure that older disabled customers, you know, you really focus on meeting their needs as your most valued customers. And that's always really sort of followed through in terms of our accessibility agenda, you know, this clear commercial carrot as opposed to legal stick or compliance. You know, really important. 4 years back, we were the first bank to launch talking cash machines. I know that's very commonplace everywhere in the US, but in the UK, you know, that was a turning point of us choosing to do it because we wanted to, as opposed to a legal compliance, you know, having to. You know, and we saw visually impaired customers with print difficulties too voting with their feet and coming to us because we were more welcoming, accommodating, and ultimately, you know, we cared. So it was a sort of good for business, and it was the right thing to do. And I think that helped just galvanise for, well, what more can we do? I guess if I pick, you know, 3 or 4 customer service examples to sort of straddle some of the main impairment groups, I think high-vis debit cards has been a really awesome, neat thing that we've done. I've got these aren't mine because I wouldn't want to be waving up my my debit cards. Again, hopefully you can sort of see them to get an idea. But this concept of, you know, for bank customers, we had a marketing campaign where you could pop up a photo of your nearest and dearest, like your pet dog or your kids. But we also realised there was a really neat accessibility use case, you know, to make it easy to identify your debit card or your credit card, to read the details or to orientate it the right way. You know, we've put on bright arrows, we've cut out notches, and we've done about 7,000 or 8,000 of those now in the UK out to retail customers who love them. You know, it's a neat thing that didn't cost mega amounts of money. It just required a slightly different set of thinking over what, you know, these little things that other folks might take for granted. So I think that's helping in the visual impairment case. When I think about hard of hearing customers, something we've launched in the last year or so is virtual sign language interpreter services. So I see many banks, telecoms, utility providers offering these, where a deaf customer, let's say, who prefers to use sign language, can use their home PC and a webcam. They can, you know, converse to a middleman of sorts, a bit like the video relay service, and do their banking business or whatever it might be. Something we've done in the last year is to offer that within our high street banking branches, so on iPads. So again, a deaf customer can come into branch, and rather than having to wait, you know, a couple of weeks to, you know, have an appointment for a savings account or a mortgage, they can do it, you know, instantly. So a real game changer. I spoke to a lady a few weeks back who was hearing impaired and had switched her whole, you know, bank and that of her entire family over to Barclays. So again, those kind of wow moments where we're doing extra accessibility services and support that make a real difference. Again, comes back to there's a business benefit. But, you know, it's not just about, I guess, you know, the virtual sign language interpreter service. You know, that's an alternative to telephone banking. It's a reasonable adjustment. Sometimes we have to treat people differently to treat them fairly, but it's also important to make sure that we design new banking products that are inclusive, that work for everyone. So say when we've recently in the last year or so launched a bit like instant messaging that you can do online within online banking or on a mobile app. We've made sure that we've involved and sought the feedback of hearing and speech impaired customers, particularly the younger generation, who are really keen to just use, mainstream channels and text as opposed to sign language. So it's important that we offer both. We're flexible and we have reasonable adjustments where they're needed, and we also make sure our mainstream banking channels are as inclusive as they can be. And I guess, oh, go on.
I think I just want to interject, and I know Deborah's got a question as well, but I think the point that you made about the whole family switching is a really interesting one, because that's something that we quite often talk about, that's quite difficult to evidence, but you've got a clear case, and you've got a clear example there of not only are you winning over a customer, an individual customer, but you've got the halo effect that you're winning over the friends and families of those customers as well, and that's quite powerful, because that magnifies the market that you're addressing significantly, and really is powerful for the business case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Did you have a question, Deborah? Because I don't want to ramble on.
I did. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I know that Barclays is really big in the United Kingdom, but you also are in the United States, because I believe Barclays is in the United States. So one question I have is, tell us, where Barclays is located, and then I have a follow-up question to that.
Okay, sure. Well, in recent months, we've had a restructure around the, if you like, the geographic footprint of Barclays. But in short, we say that we are a transatlantic consumer, corporate and investment bank, with a home market predominantly in the UK and the US. Okay. So if you like, in the UK, we're very heavy on, if you like, the banking needs of individuals, so high street banking and credit cards and small businesses. Our presence in the US is very much around, led by the investment bank, so serving the needs of corporate clients. If that sort of helps understand where we sit, I guess in terms of scale, we've got something like 130,000 members of staff. We operate in over 40 other countries as well.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked that is because I know that you're in the United States. And one thing, as the banks and the financial institutions in the United States, and those that are banking in the United States or at financial services, of course, we're very, very heavy on, we're going to have legislation, and then we're going to have litigation, and we're going to sue each other, and many of our banks have been sued and continue to be sued. And as we've had these conversations, and I've been in the accessibility field since 2001, Barclays continued to be setting the bar much, much higher than the financial institutions in the United States, and even though you are in the United States, but so we often, when we would talk about who's doing it right around the world, Barclays is always at the very top, always at the top. And so we've had a lot of different conversations about the carrot and the stick, and in the United States we got some big sticks out. We're beating everybody over the head with it, and that's just the way we do it. That's just the way we do it, and we actually are seeing progress because of it. But another bank, TD Bank, that's in Canada but also has some locations in other parts of the world, they also, I was always amazed at your model and even their model, because they seem to be very focused on what are the customers' needs. And so first of all, I applaud what your bank has been doing for many, many, many years, your financial institution, leading the way, because I believe the only way to do it is from the economics, which you've already talked about. What is right for your customers, and how can, when you make things more accessible for one maybe demographic of your customers, it also expands functionality for all of your customers. And so I just wanted to let you know, from across this side of the pond, we have been very, very impressed with Barclays. I also wanted to note that I like how you started the conversation saying, this isn't about corporate social responsibility. This is about doing the right things by our customers. And quite honestly, we just are not hearing that a lot. And I know I was very proud to get a little bit of information from my upcoming book about Barclays in there. But I just think that we can learn a lot from the successes that you've had. And so when Neil was saying he was inviting you, I was really excited because I've just been really impressed with what y'all have accomplished. I also think your story, Paul, of an individual, you know, that has walked this path but still can add great value to the workforce is so powerful, because we talk about that a lot on AXSChat. You want somebody that's determined, focused, productive, innovative, a problem solver. You really need to find the Paul Smyths of the world and go and, you know, hire them. And so you just prove the case that we make on AXSChat every single day. So it's, you know, I just want to applaud what you are doing, because you're going to change the world, not only from your efforts and your employees' efforts and your customers, but the rest of the world is watching what you're doing as well. So I just am very impressed with everything you're doing. So
making me blush. Yeah. I mean, I guess the US law side of things, I think about it very simply, right? You know, law drives change, but not necessarily the right behaviours.
Correct.
And again, that's when I speak to a lot of organisations and suppliers about what's the key thing driving you, you know, to create accessible customer services or a diverse, inclusive workforce. You know, depending on that root cause, there'll be a whole different, you know, culture of how they operate.
Right, right. So it's like, and we've recently had some of these conversations, and I know both Neil and I have done a lot of blogging about this, and I have a new podcast that I'm putting out this month, and it's Human Potential at Work. And I recently, one of the podcasts, I talk about compliance versus, you know, customer, doing the right things by your customer, and innovation. And obviously, there's a place for compliance in the United States and other countries, but we're not seeing the innovation come from the compliance efforts. We're not. And so we actually in the United States are looking across the pond and saying, what are they doing over there? You know, why are they having successes? They're not getting sued every day, and yet they keep making advancements and innovations and using these new technologies. So I really applaud the efforts that you're all making. So. Neil, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Okay, so and I know Antonio will have a question in a minute as well. So I'm very curious, because I know that we collaborate in a number of areas, and Paul, you spent a lot of time, and Barclays has invested quite a lot in terms of efforts in helping get the IAAP up off the ground. And I think that, you know, we've had Christine Peck on AXSChat, who's the CEO. I think that this is a really important thing for multinational companies. But can you tell us what it was that really sort of pushed you to make that extra step? Because you really have got deeply involved with IAAP.
Yeah, sure, Neil. I guess, you know, we share lots of our learns and insights, and we also get involved in shaping the accessibility profession, which I think is still quite new. You know, I speak to lots of accessibility professionals, and they share a couple of things in common, that they have a real colourful background of what they were doing before they became accessibility experts, and there was some epiphany or personal connection that resonated with them to make them get involved, if you like. You know, when I think about within the UK, we're heavily involved in the Business Disability Forum, the Technology Taskforce, and that collaborative space for accessibility experts or businesses to, if you like, share best practice and learn from one another, so education and networking. But we kind of need something at more of a global level, and it goes back to this point that accessibility experts, multidiscipline from where they've come, self-taught, there's not really a common language or understanding, if you like, or sense of purpose or identity to something bigger, like professionalizing the accessibility profession. You know, in assistive tech and the whole accessibility industry has really shifted over the last few years. it used to be specialist suppliers creating niche products, typically hardware and so forth, and closed in a closed system for a very narrow view of disabled people. And really now it's kind of blown out. So mainstream tech vendors getting involved. We see it almost daily from what Microsoft versus Facebook, versus Apple are doing. The products they're building being less, hardware, more apps and so forth. From cars to kettles, everyone's applying an inclusive design mindset, and our sort of definition of disability is also broadened. Non-visible disabilities, certainly in the UK. Autism is certainly flavour of the month across lots of the media, sort of BBC and Channel 4, and thinking about the older demographic as well, and really everyone. But I think within there, it's becoming more mainstream of who is creating accessible things for a broader, if you like, customer segment. So it's more than ever a great time to be an accessibility guru, but yet, there is no real kind of sense recognised, like a certification of, read this textbook or do this training, and having that common language and understanding and the skills and competence that goes with it. So Barclays is one of, I think, 20 founding members of the IAAP. You have likes of Microsoft and Disney and others over, I think, maybe two to 3 years back, really helped set that professional body up. So it does a similar thing on, if you like, organisations, a forum to learn, share and grow from one another, but critically individuals and accessibility professionals, and thinking about how do we best equip them with the right skills and knowledge and competencies to shine, and what would be recognised by organisations who realise that accessibility is important but are struggling to figure out who is an expert and how do I tell, is it letters after their name. So something that on the IAAP front, a plug, I know in March in CSUN, I think that first, if you like, foundation level of accessibility professionals was launched, very successful. And I know in the UK in late June, early July, we're going to be hosting a couple of, if you like, exam sittings for any UK-based accessibility professionals to basically, take that multiple choice test, get the handbook, and again have some form of credential or certification behind their name.
Yeah, and I think it is important, because people have not known what they're buying effectively.
Yep.
Anyone could turn up and say, "Oh well, I'm an accessibility expert," and there, obviously there are different roles within the industry. So you and I perform roles, and we do the advocacy and the governance and everything else, and then we've got other people working for us that are deeply technical, but equally. Not that I'm saying you're technically inept, or I am too, but we know that there are people that are more deeply technical than we are, and that there will be and it will expand out. And I also paid my IAAP sub, so I didn't have deep enough pockets to pay the founder members fees, but yeah, it's something that I believe it's important for the industry. And I'm guessing that Barclays' contribution to that is partly down to the fact that you have really great executive sponsorship, and that's something I'd like you to talk about, because I don't think a lot of organisations really understand quite how important that is.
Yeah, no, sure. I guess we've sort of jumped into the couple of examples of customer service. I guess when I think about the journey and the snowball effect. I mentioned sort of talking cash machines 3 or 4 years back. I speak to organisations that talk about, we have one exec sponsor that does disability or D&I in general. I guess how we approached it 3 years back was we ran a sort of living in a customer's world event where we took 150 or so of the senior business leaders, so senior and middle managers, if you like, the folks who call the shots and pay the checks of various project teams and so forth in the business, and took them out for a one-day offsite where we talked around accessibility. More importantly, though, they got to meet real-world disabled people to talk about, well, what was the challenges these folks faced in everyday life, and what was the specific issues they face in using our bank now. So hearing it, if you like, direct from a horse's mouth. So that empathy was really important. But rather than just talking about it, because we can talk all we like around accessibility, it's far better to feel it. So using a range of disability simulation kit and so forth, pop on these arthritis dexterity gloves and try and write out a check, or use a chip and pin device. Suddenly something that was very trivial is now a real barrier. And I think that really helped win hearts and minds, not of just one senior executive, but of 150 middle managers and senior executives. So that winning hearts and minds then came on to, okay, well, what's next? What more can we do? So again, we have a very clear sort of top-down desire. And actually, we've stated publicly our ambition to become the most accessible and inclusive. It was Go-To Bank, and it's just been rebranded the most accessible FTSE company. So again, it's very top down, and it links back to that sort of CSR. This isn't ad hoc do-gooder activity, but by having a big bold statement from the person at the top, it kind of makes sure that message of we are serious and committed about that, and the various projects and programs that we run, there is an overarching, this is why we do it, that links back to, just helps us keep up that momentum.
Yeah, I think that's great. Antonio, you have a question?
We've been talking about in relation to customers that small business and startups are also part of the of the conversation, and have an important relationship with banks. So what I'd like to know, Paul, is how are you able to help your SMEs, your customers, SME startups, and how you can also help them to, how can you also influence them in the way how they deliver services to their own customers?
Yeah, no, sure. So interestingly, I think something we ran a couple of months ago actually was we surveyed I think over 500 small and medium-sized enterprises, small businesses, to ask them, well, what were they doing in terms of accessibility? How were they supporting disabled customers, inclusive workforce, and why? And that was kind of quite insightful, but in a way quite depressing too. The vast majority of small businesses saying, well, we don't really have reasonable adjustments or accommodations. Things like, we're not able to 9 out of 10 weren't able to send paperwork out in large print or braille, or have a text phone, or did they have a inclusion policy? Did they train their frontline staff on disability confidence and etiquette? So again, quite a bleak picture in terms of the why. Why aren't they doing more in terms of accessibility? I think 4 out of 10 said, well, we've never really sat down and really thought about it or considered it. And you can imagine, some of the other responses more about, well, we're worried about it might cost too much, or we don't know where to start, we don't see the benefits of doing it, or that sort of thing. So I guess the one saving grace was that I think over 3/4 of these small businesses all agreed that if there was a place that they could easily get advice and guidance to tell them how to be more inclusive, how to generate more accessible services for a broader customer base and make them more happy, then they're really keen to find that. So it's something that we then built in terms of our corporate bank. So if you go to, I think the website, it's barclayscorporate.com/accessibility, then that's really an accessibility information hub. So it's there to provide information and inspiration to other businesses on, if you like, why accessibility matters. It's sharing our story, showing some of our resources, things like frontline staff, disability confidence, training videos. And there's a whole stack of case studies. In fact, plead for your listeners and accessibility professionals, if there's any good information, resources, useful links, then by all means do let us know, and we can certainly add to that, because I'd love to make it even more compelling story for other businesses to go there and and really understand and get the help, information and advice that they need.
Yeah, no, I've seen the site, and congratulations, because it is a really great thing that you've done there. And a lot of people have commented to me that it's really nice to see a big organisation like Barclays take up the mantle for pushing this information out there, because I think the last company that really did this in a big way was Yahoo, and that was years ago. Yahoo had a fantastic accessibility resource library that is kind of withered on the vine, unfortunately. But for years, when I first started in accessibility, that was the place that I would go to first, because Yahoo had made lots of stuff public. So the fact that Barclays are now doing this and you've launched this fantastic site is brilliant. I know that also you are doing outreach, and you're sponsoring the ATEC conference in Oxford on the 17th, and you're working to bring suppliers and assistive tech users together. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, sure. Thank you. Bit of ruthless self-promotion there. So the Assistive Tech Exhibition and Conference, ATEC, 17th May in Oxford, and it's really a UK-based pan-disability conference, a bit like the sort of CSUN, if you like, of US or globally, that's really aiming to bring together assistive tech AT vendors, users, and this whole emerging ecosystem of everyone in between, you know, trainers, academics, researchers, and so forth, to really, you know, share ideas, innovation, learn, share, and grow from one another. So there's, you know, a whole stack of the exhibition area, as well as workshops aimed at, you know, medical and accessibility professionals to really get up to speed with what's out there. So yeah, very keen. I'm going to be talking and showing in a bit more detail about some of the insights of customer service and so forth, or what we're doing around workplace adjustments for our staff there. But yeah, really keen to get behind, and it links back to this, you know, doing what we can externally to help professionalize the accessibility profession, and you know, create these spaces, events, opportunities where folks can learn, share, and grow from one another.
Fantastic, and I hope it goes swimmingly. I would have, yeah, unfortunately due to timing, I can't be there. I'm running an event 2 days later, and I'm going to be up to my eyeballs, but which you'll hopefully be at anyway. So,
yes, yeah.
So I also think that there's so much still that's almost on the horizon. You know, there's a load of really interesting assistive tech out there, and as new tech comes on, there's new potential for inclusion. What are the things that you are excited about right now, and what things do you see as being challenges for accessibility with your Barclays hat on, and also with your just sort of consumer hat?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's sort of think about, you know, staring into a crystal ball and banking in general. You know, I think one big opportunity around the corner is contactless and wearables. You know, so think about all the difficulties potentially of being able to, you know, fumble and get the right debit card out of your wallet, to enter it and remember, and to have the sight to see to, you know, pay for things. So I think contactless, like this NFC-enabled bracelet that I'm wearing, so BPay, again, makes it easy for people to buy stuff. So I think contactless payments is one biggie around the corner. I think biometrics as well is a huge opportunity. You know, we think about, in banking speak, security-wise, these kind of 3 tiers of authentication, or IDMV. You know, you think about you log onto a website and you enter your password, so it's something you know. You know, we might have 2-factor authentications. That might be, you know, you get a text, it's something you have, or maybe you're doing online banking. You've got one of those little calculated tokens that your bank gives you. And then there's this.
Make me cry.
Say again.
They make me cry because I can never remember the sequence.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it's a challenge, and I think that's why the third one, you know, this third level authentication, which is something you are. So biometrics removes the need for the first 2, if you like. So just as you said, Neil, if customer X, struggles, remembering pins and passcodes, then suddenly that becomes easier. We have this already with telephone banking now, where people can remember their, we save and file their voice prints, and when they call up, we are IDMVing them in the background, so it's identification and verification in banking speak. But we can use their voice print to know that they are who they say they are. And thinking through other opportunities that we can use. The risk of fraud is always going up, but what we need is something that's super secure but super simple as well. So I think biometrics really holds that key within banking. I think portable personalized preferences, wouldn't it be nice if me having low sight and wanting to see everything, let's say, on yellow text on a black background, that when I went to the train station kiosk, when I went to my cash machine, I could somehow, pop my card in or whatever, and it would give me that format and flavor that I wanted, that suited me. So I think some of that cloud-based assistive tech is around the corner. And I think one of the biggies within banking is around APIs. So I know it's this buzzword that gets chucked about. But, to kind of put this in simple terms, think about the way you folks probably use your emails. You might have a Yahoo account, a Google account, and in a way, you get to choose your email client, but that info is all sucked through and presented in. I think certainly across Europe, we're about 2 years out from seeing that same sort of mechanism happening within banking. So that creates a huge opportunity. You think about, if I can grab my savings account from bank one over here, my mortgage account, and I can have that in a hub or portal that meets my additional access needs. Maybe that's about being able to view my transactions in a Siri type interface. Wouldn't that be awesome? Maybe it's about having it in a very set, super big and Uber screen reader compatible sort of text only. Again, bank websites are often inclusively built for the vast majority of access needs. But I think this use of APIs and being able to share, account balances and transactions across the piece is going to open up a huge amount of opportunity amongst assistive tech vendors, developers, and so forth, to meet some of these more niche access needs of consumers.
Awesome. Deborah, you have a question?
I do, and Paul, that was fascinating to listen to you talk about that. We all three of us, we love technology, and I'll tell you a non-technical story. I was traveling once with a friend of mine named Lisa, who lost her sight due to diabetes, and she gave me, all of the cash in the United States. That's all exactly the same size. So if you're visually impaired or blind, too bad. You certainly hope that strangers are kind, and we try folding and all kind of stuff. But she handed me a bill, and she said, "Deborah, I want a cup of coffee. Here's a $5 bill. Would you get yourself a cup too?" Well, she had handed me a $50 bill. So I said, "Oh, sure, not a problem, Lisa. By the way, you gave me a $50 bill." She's like, "Really?" So the things that you're solving like that, I mean, they have such practical applications in ways that I think a lot of society doesn't think about. But I wanted just to dig in just for a minute, and I know that we're starting to run low on time, but obviously we know that Barclays is committed to employing talented people with disabilities. I mean, you're a wonderful example of that. But tell us a little bit more about the efforts that you're making, developing talent with disabilities, and really hiring and retaining talented individuals with disabilities.
Yeah. Okay. No, sure. So I guess in terms of thinking about how we attract, support, develop diverse disabled talent, there's a number of things we're doing. I guess one of them is our REACH network, so our disability staff network, there for people who have or have an interest in disability matters, and that really helps inform, educate, support the business, as well as providing a safe space for things like user testing. If we're doing a new office refurbishment or a new system, and again we can help bring in the diverse needs and views of these folks with a range of impairments and circumstances to help. I think one focus of our reach network over the last year or two has really been around, you know, as we kind of mature in our disability thinking, then it becomes the other taboos, the non-visible disabilities. So things like mental health, when we think about, you know, in a bank and being asked to do, you know, more with less, you know, again, mental health is really important. It's really important that our colleagues can bring their whole selves to work. So trying to get rid of that, if you like, the negative stigma around mental health, and to create the culture of openness. We've had an awesome campaign over the last couple of years, of mainly led by David sitting next to me, the This Is Me campaign, which again tells the personal stories of a dozen or so of our members of staff, you know, their journey of mental health. And that really snowballed and encouraged other members of staff to also get involved and discuss, and again just increase that engagement and openness. And in the last couple of months, we're also now showing that externally, so the videos, the blogs, the campaign approach with 50 or so other organisations, you know, in the city and beyond. So I think that's one biggie. Workplace adjustments too. So I guess reasonable accommodations, you know, for the other side of the pond. But you know, we want to make sure that it's as easy as possible for members of staff with additional needs, impairment, ill health, injury, to get the extra support and equipment that they need to succeed in the workplace. So just as many organisations have centralised, you know, a central dedicated team and central funding, so that they can quickly, you know, give someone a needs assessment, figure out what the challenges are, what extra equipment they need, and put it in place. You know, we have that mechanism, you know, within Barclays. We've also been, you know, keen in recent months to rebrand. You know, it's not about reasonable adjustments, which is a sort of legal jargon of why you have to do it, so stick beating, and it's more about this broader definition of workplace adjustments, to again have a broader view and to try and demedicalise it. So again, we've made a lot of the adjustments self-serviceable. So if you need an extra, let's say, footstool, if you need a ergonomic keyboard, then there shouldn't be a whole ton of bureaucracy to go through to get what you need, right? So you know, that's been you know, incredibly important. And I think we're now looking at things like passports. How do we record? It's not just about the stuff, if you like, the tools you need to work. So for me, that might be a big monitor or some screen reader magnifier software. But it's often about the things that get forgotten, the subtle things like the how I choose to work. So, you know, flexible working or micro breaks, or, you know, for me, being low-sighted, travelling around to tons of offices might be, you know, a struggle, or people giving me paperwork. So how we can kind of record side by side the kind of the tangible stuff, as well as the ways of working side by side in a passport that then me and manager, if you like, can then, you know, regularly discuss to see, you know, is this still right? Is it still appropriate, or what do we need to change? So again, you know, that's really around the workplace adjustments and how we support our people.
Fantastic. I know we've hit our over a half-hour buffer. We could go on for ages. So I'm sorry to cut you short, Antonio. But we've pretty much run long. It's been fantastic chatting with you, Paul. Always is.
No.
We'll see you again in a couple of weeks, and we'll see you tomorrow night for the chat on Twitter. I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been great, and I'm looking forward to sharing the insights that you've shared with us with my colleagues as well, because I'll be posting this both on AXSChat and also internally.
Cool.
Within Atos, because we're doing some similar stuff along with looking at the sort of the passports and so on as well. So it's really nice for people to see that what we're doing is in line with other large organisations.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me anyway.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. You did a great job.